This happened around 2018. For context, a buddy of mine, we'll call him KG, used to be our group's ladies' man, and it wasn't uncommon for him to want to go meet up with somebody during the night. This night in particular was no different. Some girl messaged him on a dating app, inviting him to come hang out. He said that he was with a friend but would be free in a few hours. She said, "No problem, just bring him. We can all smoke and just hang out." I was fine with it, and she gave KG the address. The place was an apartment about an hour away, and we got in the truck and headed over. Trigger warning after this point, for there would be a discussion about drugging and attempted SA. The drive was 30 minutes down the highway, followed by 45 minutes of nothing but gravel roads and fields. I distinctly remembered we joked about how it felt like we were in an alternate dimension. Zero light, no houses, and I don't remember seeing a speed limit or stop sign for most of the drive. Once we arrived, it was extremely ominous. A single yellow light hung over a single apartment building that probably only had about 3 units. The place looked old and borderline abandoned. The girl, who I'll call M, was standing out there waiting for us. I couldn't make out any features, as all I saw from the car was a silhouette. We got out, and then she let us inside. KG seemed uncomfortable when he saw her but was playing it off. I noticed that she was considerably older than us and was not the type that KG would normally go for. To be entirely honest, she looked cracked out. Her face was covered in the marks you see when stimulant users obsessively pick their faces. Regardless, we got in her apartment and shit was off immediately. The place was bare, a single couch lined with plastic, and a TV sat in the living room. The kitchen cabinets were all empty, and many were just open. For some reason, I also remember Bob's Burgers playing at an ungodly volume on the TV. She had a couple blunts already rolled up, and I got her breaking down our share to roll. She offered us white box wine and said that it was all she had. She poured 3 glasses, and I knocked back about half of it before almost gagging at a chemical taste. I didn't say anything. I don't like wine as is, and only accepted it because I was thirsty and she said her tap water wasn't safe to drink. I figured that it was just really cheap and didn't want to be rude. KG drank his, and we got to smoking and talking. When she got up to go to the bathroom, KG whispered to me that he got catfished and showed me the profile with an obviously different girl's photo. I asked if we should go, and he said that she was probably just insecure and that he still wants to hang out and see where things go. She then got back and insisted on another blunt, specifically the one that she rolled. We kept talking, and I noticed she seemed to be getting antsy and shorter in her responses, kept being very flirtatious with the both of us as well, saying that we'd be a lot more comfy if we went in her room. I also noticed I was beginning to feel strange, not the fun strangeness of THC, but the ominous feeling that I was losing control of my muscles and I was having a hard time thinking or talking. KG was basically melted in the couch, but still carrying on talking to her. I looked in my glass and noticed powdery gunk collecting at the top. I felt sick and I stumbled to the bathroom. The bathroom was disgusting. I sat down on the side of the tub and I tried to figure out what the fuck was happening. I was convinced we'd been drugged, but I kept telling myself that I was just greening out and being paranoid, despite that not being normal for me. I eventually lost track of time and place in there. Luckily, I was smart enough to lock the door. At some point, I walked out to see the living room empty and heard groaning in the other room. I knocked on the door and I got no answer. I blacked out on the couch again and only came to after hearing shuffling and seeing KG bust out of the room half naked and M following him. I stood up and she looked stone-faced. KG didn't say anything and stumbled fast out the door. I didn't need to be convinced and I followed quickly. The entire walk back to the car she followed us, not running or yelling, just walked with us, seemingly waiting for us to fall. Somehow, in his drugged up state, KG got the car going and then we peeled off. I don't remember much after that, but we both woke up the next afternoon, parked at a church in the middle of nowhere. Both of us had pounding headaches, and KG said after I went in the bathroom, she pulled him up and helped him into the bedroom. She was whispering how we were hers forever and that we never had to worry about anything ever again. He knew this was bad, but in his haze, he couldn't stand or yell for me. We drove home silently, and I didn't see KG for a while after that, and when I did, we never spoke of it again. Moral of the story? Just because you aren't alone doesn't mean you're safe. Just because you are a man doesn't mean you're safe. If you feel something is off, don't wait to get out of there. And for the love of God, don't drink anything you didn't see poured. I'm sorry if this story is a bit of a downer or if it's inappropriate for the sub. The memory has never left my mind. It was awful and terrifying, but also surreal and almost feels like a dream. KG said that luckily I knocked at the perfect time and she didn't get what she wanted out of him, and the knock brought him back to momentary awareness. Things could have been a lot worse, but I will never forget what happened in the apartment in the fields. A couple years ago, I needed to pick up a Facebook Marketplace find, but I didn't have a car. I found an ad on Facebook for a guy with a truck, and I asked if he could meet me at the pickup spot. He met me, helped me load the stuff, and my house was just up the street, so I asked if he could give me a lift back, which he did. I used him a couple more times, and so did my husband over the next few years. My husband would also accept rides from him, and sometimes, if we had a lot of stuff, he would bring a friend with him to help with the moving. He was a super quiet guy. He never says much, and he just shows up and does the job and leaves. One day in April 2024, I saw a bunch of furniture on the side of the road for garbage day that I wanted to save. The homeowner let me put it back on their porch, and I texted my truck guy asking if he could come help me. He said sure, and that he would come tomorrow, and asked if I needed a second person this time, and I said no. He gave me the rate of $100, which I thought was pretty reasonable if not cheap, considering that he had to drive almost an hour to get where I am, but I figured whatever since he sets his own rates. Flash forward to the day in question. My husband is away and the pickup spot is just down the street. So I'm walking towards it and I see his truck. I also then notice that there is someone in the passenger side seat. The windows are super tinted though, so it's kinda hard to tell. This immediately puts me on edge because I said that I didn't need two people for this kind of job. And as I get closer and walk around the truck on the passenger side, I see that it is a woman, but she doesn't get out of the truck. He gets out of the truck, and he's unexpectedly cheery to see me. He asks how I'm doing, blah blah blah. And then, before we have even started loading the furniture, he goes, "So, you'll ride with me again today?" This caught me off guard, and I was like, "Oh, no, don't worry, it's just up the street." He goes on to say that it's not a problem and that I should just ride with him. He clears a spot in the back seat of the truck behind the passenger seat, and as we are loading, the woman finally comes out, but she doesn't say anything to me, which I thought was weird. She starts to load things in the truck bed. As we are loading, I am texting my husband, and I'm like, something is feeling really weird. He really wants me to get on his truck. My husband says absolutely not to do it, and then to send him the license plate. So I get sneaky, and I look at it and I send the plate details. I tell him that I feel rude by not getting in the truck. When the truck bed started to get full, I put some of the last items in the spot behind the passenger seat that he had cleared for me, and then both of them are like, "Oh, no, that's your seat, don't do that." And then they move the items from the back seat to the truck bed. I'm jokingly saying things like I'm going to walk, that I need to get my steps in, blah blah blah. And when we finally finish loading, it's me, him, and her standing outside the truck. I tell them that I will meet them there, and again he's like, No, we will give you a ride." This goes back and forth for actually so long, with both of them trying to convince me to get in the truck, and I am getting more and more flustered because, like, what is even going on? And then the girl who I assume was a girlfriend was like, "Would you feel more comfortable if I sat in the back seat instead, and you could sit up front?" At this point, I'm hella confused and my heart is racing. I know something is up, so I just blurt out that I am not getting in the truck. And I listen to way too much true crime, and I'm not getting in the truck, and I do not feel comfortable. After I say this, they just kind of start laughing like it's a funny joke, like, "Oh, yeah, of course, we get it." So I start walking, and they drive over. And by the time that I get there, they have dumped the furniture on the front yard of the house. She stays in the truck, and he hardly says a word to me. I said, I'll send you an e-transfer." And then he's back to being his quiet self. They then leave in a hurry. My adrenaline is going wild. I was so confused, and I kept replaying the interaction and seeing more and more red flags. The crazy thing is that I would have gotten in the truck, and that was my plan all along. The night before, when chatting with my husband, I even said, "Yeah, he'll probably offer me a ride again, which would really be helpful." I had fully planned on getting on the truck, and the scary thing is that had he not acted so different right off the bat, had he just introduced the woman and said like, "Oh, sorry, I had to grab her from work," and then not made such a big deal about me getting in the truck, I would have gotten in. I have no doubt in my mind that they were planning to do something sinister. Why else would she notice that I was clearly uncomfortable and still trying to get me in the truck? The thought that did run through my mind was the Crime Junkie podcast words to live by. Be weird, be rude, stay alive. And I do think that motto gave me the confidence to fully be like, hell no, and stand my ground. So yeah, that's how I was almost kidnapped. When I was 17 years old, I met a friend from my old school that left before we graduated because she went to live in the capital with her family. She was also 3 years older than me. We were happy to see each other again, and she invited me to spend a couple of days at her parents' in the capital. They were out of the city for all summer. Of course, I agreed. Summer came, and I managed to save enough money for a train ticket. The rest will be on my friend, she said. My mom was against this trip because she couldn't give me money to book a hotel in case something goes wrong. Also, she didn't really know my friend well to trust her. We were in a really bad place financially, literally just enough to buy some food and that's it. But me, being a stupid teenager and not used to being told no, finally persuaded her. The capital was a night away from my town, so I arrived there in the morning. My friend worked her last shift before holiday and wasn't able to meet me for the whole day, and that's why we decided that I'd go for a walk, maybe visit some museums, and will only go to her apartment in the evening when she comes home from work. Her apartment was in the outskirts, nothing interesting to see there. I sent her a message that I'm finally in the capital, and then she replied with, "Okay, I can't wait to get off work." I went walking for hours until my legs hurt, but I was overwhelmed with excitement. Evening came, and I was standing outside of her place. She wasn't answering my calls. I knocked and knocked to no avail, and finally she picked up the phone just to say that she's sorry, but there's been a family emergency and she's going back to her hometown, which was my hometown too. In fact, she was already there because she traveled on a plane. My friend got the bad news in the middle of the day, went home, and collected her things in kind of a fog, forgetting about me completely. I couldn't really blame her. I had some extended family in the capital and I called them, but none answered. Later, I learned that they were all on a holiday in Spain. So now I was homeless and alone in one of the biggest cities in the world with nowhere to go. I didn't even have enough money for one night in a hotel, just a ticket back home in 4 days. That's what my mom was so afraid of. Where am I going to spend these 4 days and nights? I went back to the station and tried to change my ticket for a closer date, but there were no places on any train. Summer is a high season, and it would be foolish for me to expect anything else. And then I tried to buy a ticket on the bus that was departing in half an hour. The destination was not my hometown, but a city 100 kilometers from it. It was good enough for me, but to purchase the bus ticket, I needed to return my train one and then get my money back. The queue was so long, and while I was contemplating, the bus had left and night arrived. I went back to the station and I sat in a chair, thinking that it will be safer than outside. The station was big, well lit, and had police after all. There were few unfortunate people like myself, mostly sleeping, hands wrapped around their bags. I have never traveled alone, never been alone and homeless at night. I was still quite a hothouse flower, and this situation was a huge shock for me. I was terrified, scared, And when I think about midnight, I started crying. Just silent tears going down my cheeks that I would wipe immediately. But it was enough for someone to notice me. In fact, I think I was noticed even before that. A guy came up to me and asked what was wrong. I was so desperate that I told him everything. He started grinning, introducing himself as Ahmed. He said that he will help me, but quickly got pushy and invasive. I got up and sat a couple of rows down, even more scared. Then, I saw another guy looking at me. Our eyes met and he approached. He sat next to me and said he watched my interaction with Ahmed, that I did a good thing getting rid of him, and how everything is going to be fine because he, let's call him Jan, will be with me until the morning and then get me to the main bus station in the other part of town and make sure that I have a ticket home. He even promised to give me money in case that I won't have enough to pay for a ticket. The bus sounded like a good idea, being less comfortable than a train. Therefore, the odds of successfully buying a ticket were higher because people rarely travel such long distances on a bus. Jan even said that he's sure that there will be a lot of empty seats. He also said that I remind me of his younger sister, and overall, he gave off the vibe of a good and trustworthy guy next door, that I immediately calm down and believe everything is going to turn out well. We were talking for about an hour. Ahmed disappeared somewhere, and I no longer saw his eyes drilling holes in me and Jan. Then Jan said that we both need to eat and rest a little before the morning comes, and he suggested that we go to the other hall. That hall was unlike the place that we were sitting for the first part of the night that was meant for sleeping. The other hall was dimly lit and quiet, with an enormously high ceiling that we could barely see it due to the poor lighting. About 10 people were in chairs sleeping. In the front of the hall was a small cafe and a restroom at the end of it. Jan asked the waitress for hot water, then offered me noodles and tea. I suddenly remembered that every couple of hours, there was an announcement that said that you must never eat with someone that you don't know to avoid your drink and food getting spiked. I immediately said that Jan must eat half of my bowl and I will eat half of his. He was taken by surprise, but he complied with my request. After we ate, I felt so much better. Jan and I sat in our chairs and started talking again, when all of a sudden, our situation escalated. It was about 2 a.m., still too early for me to go outside and ask for help. Ahmed appears out of nowhere and then attacked Jan, almost yelling, being very rude and telling him to leave me alone. Jan calmly asked him to go and talk somewhere else. I watched them move a couple of rows back and sit there. I expected Jan to get rid of Ahmed quickly, but their conversation lasted way longer than I thought. It took about 15 or 20 minutes, during which Jan looked at me, listening to what Ahmed is saying, and nodded from time to time. His glance was cold and insolent, like I was no longer a human being to him. The kind and funny guy from next door disappeared. Finally, the guys got up and sat on both sides of me. I felt cornered, but then it got worse. 2 more guys appeared out of nowhere. Ahmed said that they were his friends, smirking. I freaked out, and Jan patted my knee and squeezed it. I was happy that I wore jeans because I would hate him touching my skin. The guys were looking at me, laughing, talking gibberish, reminding me very much of hyenas. They were probably thinking that there is no way out for me, and at that moment, it was hard to disagree. The oldest one said something to me that I didn't understand, and I looked at him confused. They laughed again, and Ahmed said, "You didn't understand because it was a prison lingo. He's been to prison, hasn't he? What were you done for? Tell her." "Doing something bad to a sweet girl like her?" he replied with a smirk, and all men burst out laughing again. I tried my best not to look scared, but don't think they bought it. Who wouldn't be? There was a possibility that they were saying it to make me panic. But the prison guy was literally sitting on the floor next to my feet. He grabbed it and started trying lifting my jeans up. It got to me that in just a second, this disgusting, stinky man will touch my skin, and it threw me in such a fit of rage that I pulled my leg back, nearly punching him and screaming, "Don't touch me! Don't you dare!" I leaned over and I swear I was ready to kill him with my bare hands. He looked me in the eyes, backed out, almost falling on the floor. I saw terror in his eyes, and for a moment, it gave me such a pleasure. Of course, I could never fight him, but this unexpected move from a teenage girl, scared nearly to death, really seemed to take them by surprise. The men were no longer laughing. They suddenly left me almost alone, with just Ahmed still sitting near. I started realizing what just happened, and all my body was shaking violently. I couldn't stop it. Ahmed's glance was full of hate for me, and something else that I wasn't able to discern. "What do you think will happen in the morning?" He then pointed to Jan and continued, "He takes you to the bus station? No, he'll take you to our place, and you can't imagine what we'll do to you." And he said what they do. For some reason, I don't remember it at all. Maybe my mind just obliterated it for the sake of my sanity. Anyway, I couldn't contain my panic anymore, and I got up and slowly went to the exit of the hall. I tried my best to keep the pace very slow, even though I wanted to run. I felt that if I'd run, it would provoke the men. They didn't stop me because I had nowhere to go. Outside, there's probably more of them waiting for me, and even if not, it's still too dangerous to try. I continued walking mindlessly, and like a dream in the desert, I saw the police sitting on a bench that the cleaner moved from the other hall while doing their job. I practically ran to the officers and I told them my story. They didn't seem to care at all, and one of them yawned and pointed to an empty space on the bench and said that I can sit with them if I wanted to. Police in my country is quite corrupt, so it was the best that they could offer. And honestly, I wasn't expecting more. I happily accepted the invitation and I sat with them. In about 30 minutes, I saw Jan approaching us. He was alone. He greeted the police and looked like they knew each other. At this point, I wasn't surprised with anything. Really, what were all these guys doing at the station for the whole night? There's no trains from 1:30 till 4:30. There were no bags. They weren't sleeping or anything. They looked like a gang, not tired travelers stuck in the capital for the night. It was very possible that they were doing all kind of illegal businesses here, and the police knew and never intervened. Seriously, to even stay at the station at night, all passengers were required to have tickets for upcoming dates. I got mine checked twice when I entered the first and the second hall. And these guys? How did they even get in? And that's why I didn't trust the police. But I was also hoping that they wouldn't let the gang kidnap me in front of them. So, Jan sat with us too. The officers even joked, "Is she your fiancé?" They all laughed and I did too. After that, they returned to discussing their businesses, while Jan tried to persuade me to get back to the dark hall. I asked what was wrong with him. I still thought he was a good guy, just playing to pretend that he went along with their plans for me, as he couldn't possibly take down all of them. He got really agitated, practically begging me to go back. I eventually got tired, and I said no quite firmly. I couldn't think of any potential reason for me to go there, and why would his rescue plan even demand that? We sat in the chairs for a couple of hours. Every minute of it, I was afraid that the men would come for me, and that it would be over. I am all my mom had left, but she'll never see me again. I'll become a statistic, another missing girl, and I put all my strength in praying that I'll forever be a good daughter and a good person if God rescues me from these men. I've never prayed so hard in my life, begging God to save me, not for me, but for my mom, because she wouldn't survive losing me. My prayers helped me calm down and cleared my mind a little bit. Now, I had an excellent plan of how to get off the station in the capital as soon as the morning comes. A part of my extended family lived 3 hours from the capital, and trains for their station departed every 2 hours. The tickets were cheap. I have never met them, but my granddad was on very good terms with them. I only needed to call my mom and ask her to tell Grandpa to call his family to pick me up. I was anxiously waiting for the morning to come, and every minute spent on the police bench was a minute one. About maybe 4:30, I saw a bunch of men who cornered me, including Ahmed. They stared at me with hungry eyes and then greeted the police. They shook hands with them, and again, no surprise there. They passed us, probably wanted to meet the first morning train. It was from the capital city of the country that Ahmed said that he's from. Another hour went by, and Jan asked me to go back to that hall again, and this time I complied. The police were already moving the bench back anyway. Plus, I saw Ahmed and his buddies leaving that hall, and most importantly, more and more people were arriving at the station in advance for the 6 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. trains. There were men, women with children, and I knew that I almost made it. In the hall, Jan offered me to rest on his bag that he'd laid on his knees, but I refused, and I said that I don't want to sleep. He replied with, "Well, I'm very tired and it's too early to go to the bus station. We can nap for an hour." Crouching over his bag and seemed to fall asleep. I decided to wait, not knowing if he's genuinely asleep and wanting to avoid confrontation with him if possible. I could ask any woman for help. I could go to the restroom and try to use their big open window to escape. Still, it would be much better if I can sneak out while he's sleeping. I waited for a whole hour, pushing it pretty close, but I wanted the hall to be as much crowded as possible in case he wakes up immediately after I make my move. So I got up at 6:30. He was still sleeping, and I made a few steps looking over my shoulder, and he stayed in the same position. I really needed to visit the restroom that was at the end of the hall, so I did it as quickly as I could. When I was back in the hall again, he still seemed to be fast asleep. I exhaled with relief, and I ran away. I called my mom at 7 a.m., calmly explaining that my friend needed to leave and that I can't stay at her apartment. So why wouldn't I visit my extended family in another town? She then promised to get Grandpa to warn them of my arrival, and I bought the ticket immediately. Even if they would kick me out, I am not staying here another minute. It was an hour and 20 minutes till my train arrived, so I tried to blend in with the crowd, moving with them back and forth, hiding from everyone, including the police. Last night, I got quite an understanding of how corrupt they were. One crowd took me to the hall where Ahmed and his buddies cornered me and where I left Jan about some time ago. But he was no longer there. His chair stood empty. Was he a good guy? Sometimes I still think about him, but I can never get an answer. I guess I will never know. Maybe it's even better that I didn't get to.